Okay.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another Sky Career Talks. Today we're going to be exploring private operating foundations. And we have with us here Josie Faass, who's the Executive Director of the Robert Shockenbach Foundation. And thank you so much for joining us today. Josie brings a wealth of different types of experiences and career learning, and I am very excited to have her with us. And please tell us a little bit about your foundation, your current job role, and anything else that you would like to share with our students. Welcome.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. So I'll tell you a little bit about our foundation. It's the Robert Shockenbach Foundation, which is a mouthful, but it's been around for about 100 years, so we are sort of loath to do anything with the name. But I've been running the foundation for about a year now, a little bit over a year. It is a private operating foundation, which is a little bit of a unique structure. There aren't a huge number of private operating foundations out there. They tend to, though, be things like museums more than like grant-making foundations. So it's a specific tax structure. But we've been in New York City for about 100 years, recently moved to Princeton. And with me coming in, it's sort of a new chapter for the organization, and we're stepping outside of our comfort zone in some pretty interesting ways. And so it's an exciting time at the organization. In my role as executive director, I'm essentially the CEO, so I have ultimately responsibility for all of the operations of the organization. So I oversee all of our programming. We do some grant making, so I oversee all of that and our contractual relationships. I supervise all of our staff. I have fiscal responsibility for the organization. And I also report to a 21-person board of directors. So it is quite a lot. It's certainly more than a 40-hour-a-week job, but it's a job that I'm really enjoying. It's bringing me outside of, I think, some of the things that I had become comfortable with in my career. I had spent much of my career in academia in different capacities as an administrator, as an educator. And so this organization is really about education, and it's about economic equity. So in that way, it's related. But this is a whole different ball of wax for me, and it's a very fun thing to be undertaking.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about how our MI students could be connected to maybe to your foundation, and what would be job opportunities maybe that they could explore with you?
Yeah, so I mentioned that we're sort of doing a lot of new things right now. One of the areas that we're really focused in is communications. And for us, it sort of takes two complementary forms. One of those is about communicating to people where they are right now. So our foundation is focused on economic equity. It's specifically around the idea that that the Earth's resources are sufficient to provide a basic quality of life for all people, and that it's government's role to really make sure that that happens, and that wealth and resources aren't concentrated in a few people's hands at the expense of everybody else's well-being. Mm-hmm. And so at the moment and for the future, we're really focused on weighing in on the current discourse in public events around these types of issues. So whether it's universal basic income, it's access to being able to vote, it's issues around racial equality, police brutality. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so that's a major focal area, is sort of taking our mission and our vantage point and translating it into what's happening in people's lived experience right now. And so that takes the form of videos, it takes the form of social media content, newsletter, blog posts. So that's where we're focused, and it's an area where we're sort of always, open to and looking for support. And the thing that I sort of think of as the complement to that is that we have a sort of a historical focus as well. So I mentioned, we've been around for about 100 years. The individual whose ideas were really the genesis of this organization was a social activist and economist named Henry George. And so he sort of articulated these ideas extremely clearly, was a very galvanizing figure in history. And so he's sort of the reason that we're all here right now. And so this historical project is really around organizing and making available those historical materials that we have related to his works and people who had a similar mindset. And so we're in the process of creating a sort of a small, fun little open access library in Princeton. And then the secondary piece to that will be, I'm hoping, an online digital archive. And so again, related to what the students at SCI are focused on, communications has a role, I think, in every organization, and in ours, it's becoming a more and more prominent part of what we're doing.
That's fantastic. And what would you say would be a few very, very important skills that students would need to have in the current job market?
So, okay, so I did some thinking about this. So the skills that have gotten me to sort of where I am right now are sort of specific, and I'm not going to dwell on those because I think there's a couple really general things that would be of use to anybody entering the job market. And so the first is communication. And I know that's a little silly, and it seems silly to be saying it in the context of a video for this school in particular. But what I mean by that is really the ability to express yourself in a way that you can bring people along with you. So as you're starting your career, the ability to articulate what's in your head, to solve puzzles, to explain, and to get the people that you're talking to, writing for, building a website for, creating a video for, to get them to fall in lockstep with you and make that journey with you is huge. I mean, that's a big part of succeeding in any job. And I can imagine that it would be really, really important for people, graduating from this school in particular. And I think the key part of that, and this is really universal, is that before you can communicate, you have to have it together in your own head. And that, again, it sounds like well, of course, but a lot of people, the tendency can be, I'm just going to talk and I'll work it out as we go. And I think from the perspective of a potential employer, knowing that I'm dealing with a professional at any stage in their career, but a professional who's taken the time to really sit with the content, understand it, digest it, and be able to tell me about it in a way that resonates is huge. And so that's the kind of thing that's going to help somebody, no matter what their ultimate career goals are, but to advance, rapidly down that career path. And then the other thing that I came up with, and this was an idea that I think I've really only formally encountered when I started managing staff myself, was this notion of managing up. And so I thought it would be a good thing to kind of introduce here, because I feel like it's kind of omitted from a lot of career coaching or advice that young people get. And basically what this notion is that whatever your job function is, whatever your domain is, you take full ownership of it. And you are the expert in the thing that you're an expert in. And so when you're just starting out, it can be a little intimidating, right? Because you don't have a huge amount of experience. You got a lot of people over you, typically in sort of the organizational hierarchy, people in your field who are rock stars, right? And you may just think like, I'm just starting out, what do I know? The reality is, you know a lot, you know more than you think you know. And the other reality is that the people over you need you to own that, okay? Because when you're managing other people, when you're in a decision-making role, you're trusting the people who are under you, who are managing those smaller parts, to do it well, to tell you when there's an issue, and this is really important, to come to you with solutions. So if I have a staff member who's encountering a problem, first of all, I want to know that. But second of all, I need them to tell me what to do about it. And so if a person is just beginning their career path, it can feel like too much to say, listen, this is a problem. Okay, that's already intimidating. I'm having a problem. But then to say, listen, boss, I have a solution, is like, I'm not comfortable doing that. But I'm telling you, like, just do it. It will do wonders for your career. Your boss will appreciate it, and you will advance. And it's really something that I think, a lot of people who are in managerial positions wish that they could have. And when I'm recruiting people into positions, I typically will ask those sorts of questions to tell me, is this a person who's comfortable doing this? And if they are, that's a huge plus for me. And if they're not, that's kind of a red flag. And the one thing I would add is that if you're in a workplace where that attitude is not rewarded, where you feel like you're being micromanaged, where you feel like you're being second guessed, where you know that you know a thing, but you're not getting the confidence of the people around you and above you, then that's not a great place to work. And so I guess the third itty bitty piece of advice would be, do yourself justice. And when a place isn't honoring who you are and what you're bringing to it, find a place that will.
Thank you so much. These were really valuable advice for our students and really everybody who is looking for a new opportunity or even are in a professional role. Is there any other maybe last thought that you'd like to share with our students?
Yeah, so just very briefly. So you had, when we spoke before, you had asked me about like if I had advice for my younger self. And, you know, sure, I have a ton of advice, but but the specific thing that sort of came to mind is this notion of authenticity. So young people, and I have kids, so I see it, you know, they're not college age yet, but I see it already sort of starting. There's a lot of pressure to be a thing, right? To be successful, to whatever that metric is. And it's often money, right? It's often compensation. And the world kind of tells you, like, if you want to be a success in life, you should pursue these things. And what I wish that somebody had told me, and I guess I sort of understood it at some level intuitively, but it would have been nice to hear it out loud, is that the world is such a big place. There's room for all sorts of people. And that if your drive is taking you to a place that isn't a doctor, a lawyer, high paying, you know, sort of checking those boxes, you should listen to it, because your job, your career ends up shaping your entire life. And, you know, it sounds cheesy and it sounds like, oh, of course, but it's really true. You know, it shapes everything from how much you travel, how much you see your friends, how much you see your kids, you know, where you can live. So I think taking the time early to be honest about what's meaningful to you and sort of trying to block out the voices that are telling you what should be meaningful is so important. Because when you're in a job and a career that you feel you're making a difference or you're showing up for yourself, it's totally different than when you're not. And I've done both of those things. So I can tell you, like, the job that I'm in right now, the career that I've pursued, I feel really good about. You know, I'm not a rock star. I'm not doing anything that other people can't do, but I'm doing something that I feel is making a difference. And the fact that I'm putting my effort into something that when I go to bed at night, I think today was tough, but I'm getting, you know, I'm moving down that path I care about, is huge. And so I would really wish for people who are thinking about a career to take that step. It's really worth it.
Thank you so much. I think this was a wonderful ending thought for us. And yes, you are a rock star. Absolutely. And if anybody would like to connect with Josie a little bit more, she can be reached through us. Send us an email. We'll connect you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talking to Sky and Sky students, and love to see you at our next event or somewhere around campus soon. Thank you.
Great.